Hey, citizens of Ozark, this is Steve Childers, your Ozark City Administrator, and I want to talk to you about an important question that the City of Ozark is asking you to consider on the April 3rd, 2018 ballot. It's about a use tax. What is a local use tax? A local use tax is the same as a local sales tax, but charged on out-of-state and online purchases, including automobiles, trailers, boats, and other motorized vehicles that require licensing. The two primary topics that the use tax is going to cover is out-of-state motor vehicle sales and out-of-state online purchases. And I'd like to explain what that means. But first, I want to talk about our local taxes. Most often when people hear the word tax, they begin to cringe. Well, I understand that. But we need to understand how our taxes work and exactly how much of the tax that you think is going to the City of Ozark really does go to the City of Ozark. So, we'll first look at property taxes. When you look at your property tax bill, and in this case, this is a single-family residence paying $2,495.50 a year. Most people, when we talk to them, say, I would assume that the City of Ozark gets the whole property tax. Well, as you can see from this chart, that isn't the case. In the City of Ozark, there are 12 different taxing districts. And in the City of Ozark, the majority of the property tax goes to the school system. And the City of Ozark actually receives less than 5% of the total property tax bill that you pay on your real estate taxes. As you can see here in the pie graph, this is another representation of the different taxing districts and the fact that the City of Ozark, it only makes up about 5% of the receipts from the total tax bill. Then we get the question of, well, how does that compare to other areas in the region? If you look at this chart, you will see that the City of Ozark actually has one of the lowest general tax levies in the region. Look at the other cities that you may recognize: Springfield, Marshfield, Rogersville, Branson, and you will see that their general tax levy is higher than the City of Ozark's, significantly higher than the City of Ozark in certain circumstances. Now we'll talk about local sales tax. When I ask people, well, how much is the sales tax in Ozark? They often say, well, I don't know, but it's higher than most other places. Well, it is a little higher than other places because the percentage is 8.35%. But then when I say, well, where does that local sales tax go? The answer is generally to the City of Ozark. Well, the fact is that that just isn't true. The majority of the local sales tax in the City of Ozark is collected by the state of Missouri, and it's kept by the state of Missouri. That money does not come back to the City of Ozark. That's 4.225%. Then Christian County receives 1.5%, E911 0.25%, and the City of Ozark gets 2.375% of the total 8.35% collected when you make a purchase. That's collected by the Department of Revenue, and it's remitted back to the entities that you see on this slide. Now let's look at the distribution of that sales tax. When you look at the percentage of the total sales tax collected in the City of Ozark, you'll see that the City of Ozark gets only 28% of the total 8.375%. And then if you'll go to the right of the slide, you will see that amount is broken down into 5 different categories. The one that we're most focused on in this presentation is the general fund. And why? It's because the general fund is made up primarily of these expenses. When the sales tax is used in the general fund, it requires 77% to go to public safety, that's your police and municipal courts, and streets. Only 23% is left to handle the cost of all the other departments in the city. And as you can see by the list to the right, that is a lot to handle with 23%. So why now? Why a use tax now? Why is the city asking the citizens to consider this? 2 very important reasons. One, the motor vehicle sales tax that the City of Ozark and all other cities have been collecting for over 50 years is in jeopardy of being lost. The reason for that is because the state of Missouri has put a deadline on the motor vehicle sales tax, telling municipalities that if they want to continue to collect this tax, they must get the voters to reauthorize that tax before November of 2018. Otherwise, specific to the city of Ozark, we estimate, by the Department of Revenue's estimates, that the city would lose an annual estimated amount of $300,000 a year. $300,000 a year in the general fund budget that we have been collecting every year for the last 50 years and become very reliant on to pay for things like public safety, streets, parks, sidewalks, and trails. Now, the second part of the use tax is the new part of the use tax, which will cover the gap that exists between shopping local and shopping online. We all recognize that the phenomenon and the trend of shopping online is going to increase. It already has over the last several years, and it will continue to do so in the near future. The estimated amount that the city stands to gain by applying the local sales tax when someone buys a product online and out of state is about $120,000 as estimated by the Department of Revenue. So the total amount of effect that this use tax can have on the city of Ozark is approximately $420,000. Well, what does that really mean? Let's first look at the amount that we stand to lose. The amount that we would stand to lose on an annual basis would be equivalent to 6 police officers, or 2.4 miles of asphalt, or 7.5 police cars, or 15,000 linear feet of city sidewalk. The reason why the slide says and/or is because most likely, if this were to happen and the tax not pass, then the Board of Aldermen of the City of Ozark would have to decide what combination of these things would be impacted and where the cuts would be. But it certainly would be in these areas because these are the areas that cover general fund expenses. So, some of the key points that you should know. All municipalities have been collecting the motor vehicle sales tax for over 50 years. This is not a new tax. It was just something that will stay in place the same way that it has been for 50 years. Also, the use tax rate for online purchases and out-of-state purchases will be exactly the same as a local sales tax. So whether you purchase something from a local store or you buy it online, the Ozark sales tax, 2.375%, will be exactly the same as required by state statute. You're never charged both a use tax or a sales tax. You either pay one or the other, depending on how you make your purchase. Also, if you're making online purchases from inside Missouri, then you will not pay the online use tax for Ozark. That is being collected by the city from which you're making the purchase from, as long as it's inside the state of Missouri. So this ballot question is more about what Ozark stands to lose than what we stand to gain. We immediately stand to lose the vehicle sales tax that we've relied on for so long, and we hope to get that reinstated if the voters decide to vote yes to support this ballot measure. The City of Ozark is not the only city that is having to do this. All cities in the state of Missouri are being required to reinstate their vehicle motor sales tax before November of 2018, and if they want to begin collecting local sales tax on purchases made out of state online, they also have to pass a use tax. Several cities, more than 130, have already passed local use taxes, including some in our region, like Springfield and Willard. Also, our neighbors to the west, the city of Nixa, will have a use tax on their ballot as well, asking their citizens whether or not to support this question. The City of Ozark asks that you turn out and vote on April 3rd.